Thank you for being here, and we'll get started. I'd like to introduce our speaker. This is Heidi Dalenberg, and she's the Director of Institutional Reform Project at the ACLU. If you don't know what that stands for, it's American Civil Liberties Union, who protect our rights through the courts very often.
So I understand I disappointed some people because I am not on Facebook or LinkedIn, and nobody could figure anything out about me. So I'll tell you just a couple of minutes about my background. I went to the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana for college. I went to law school at Loyola University in Chicago. I worked in private practice for a big law firm for about 30 years, but the whole time that I was doing that work, I was working as a cooperating lawyer with the ACLU on the case where we sued the Department of Children and Family Services for not taking appropriate care of our foster kids. That lawsuit is still going on. I'm afraid I'm going to retire before it does. It's been more than 30 years now, but we're seeing some improvements there lately. So my project is about trying to help people that are in institutional care move out into the community if that's what their preference is. The state is supposed to take good care of our foster kids. They're also supposed to help people who are in institutions because of physical disabilities, intellectual or developmental disabilities, or mental health issues to live in the community if they want to by providing some supports around them. So, with the Medicaid cuts, we're very, very, very concerned about our ability to continue to have people supported in the community. And I know that you all are quite concerned about additional cuts, possibly to Medicare and possibly to Social Security. So, we're going to start the program, and it's entitled, Can They Really Do That? Because I think that's what everybody's asking themselves these days. So if we could go to the next slide. So I have to start with this disclaimer. I'm a lawyer, but I am not your lawyer. I am giving a public presentation, not legal advice. If anybody has a specific problem or issue that they need to talk to a lawyer about, this is not the place to do it, and I'm telling that to you for your protection. Anything that you say in this room is public information, and you should be talking in private to a lawyer, and only to your lawyer if you have a legal problem. So,
You're being recorded, so just
right.
so you know.
So it's really important not to bring up your own personal legal issues in this context. So that's just one warning. The second thing is, although I'm going to be talking about Social Security and Medicare a little bit, I am not a benefits counselor. So if anybody's got questions about how to do something with their coverage, what to do about when to start drawing down, don't ask me. I am not the right person to tell you, okay? I'm here to talk to you about civil liberties and civil rights. So that's the disclaimer. Then we get my public service announcement. Some of the news I'm going to give you today isn't that great. Please don't shoot the messenger. Okay?
We're not Trump.
I love Trump.
We're not Trump.
Right, and the ACLU, I just need to say this because it's very important. We are not a political organization. We are nonpartisan. All we do is to try to protect civil liberties under the Constitution, under federal law, and under state law. That's enough of the preamble. Okay. Next slide. So just a little bit of history. The Social Security Act, as many of you probably remember from your grade school, was enacted as part of the New Deal under FDR, right? It was something that came out of the Great Depression. It's often referred to as a social safety net program. During the LBJ administration, about 60 years ago now, there were amendments to the Social Security Act that created Medicare and Medicaid. So they're all kind of under this umbrella of the Social Security Act. That's the overarching legal structure that we're working with here. They're both, all three of those programs are things called federal benefit programs. And although they're all under the Social Security Act, they're structured differently from one another. And that difference in structure is going to matter a little bit, in actually kind of a good way. So currently, Medicaid, because of the way it's structured, is much more susceptible to very big changes and changes without a lot of warning. And I'm gonna go over why that is. Medicare and Social Security are a little bit tougher to change, and that's good, because the more time things take, the more people can kind of figure out what's going on and they can start to raise a ruckus. And that's what we're gonna talk about, how to do that effectively later on in the presentation. All right, so people have been asking a lot, do I have a right to Social Security? And do I have a right to Medicare? I'm gonna tell you a little story about a guy named Ephraim Nestor, and he's gonna tell you the answer to that question. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, here's Ephraim Nestor's timeline. In 1913, he's a Bulgarian immigrant. He comes to the United States. From 1933 to 39, he got a little frisky and he joined the Communist Party. It was kind of a thing to do back then. But then he stopped being a member in 39. And at the time he was a member, it wasn't illegal, it wasn't wrongful, and it wasn't a grounds for being deported from the country. From 1936 to 1955, Ephraim's working just like all of us, and he's paying his FICA taxes like all of us. He's paying into Social Security. In 1954, there was an amendment to the Social Security Act. And that amendment said, if anybody gets deported from the United States because they are or were a member of the Communist Party, their Social Security benefits will be cut off. 1955, Ephraim hits the magic age. He starts drawing down on his Social Security. In 1956, he gets deported because somebody went back and looked at his record and found out that years and years and years and years ago, he was a member of the Communist Party. So off he went out of the United States, back to Bulgaria. They stopped paying his Social Security. He said, wait a minute, I paid into Social Security, I earned this, this is mine, I have right to this, don't I? So he sued, and his case went all the way up to the Supreme Court. Next slide. And what the Supreme Court said was, the Social Security program is not a right. It is not like a savings account that you paid into. It is not property that you have a right to. You don't have a vested right in Social Security. And if the Congress wants to change the Social Security Act, they can do that as long as they have a minimally, basically, rational reason for doing it. They said that deciding not to pay Social Security to somebody who had been deported was rational. They didn't really know why Congress did it. They didn't know the true reason underlying this change in law, but they made one up. And they said, this is one reason it could have been. And as long as it could have been, that's good enough. They said, you know what? Once you're deported, you're not going to be spending your money in the United States anymore. And that means that the federal dollars that we're sending out to you for Social Security payments isn't going to help our economy. And that's not good for the country. So it makes sense to terminate people's benefits once they've been deported out of the country. For whatever reason, we can do it, and that's an okay thing to do. So that's the sad situation that we look at as far as what our right is to Social Security. And unfortunately, that thinking translates over not just to Social Security, but also to Medicare and to Medicaid. Okay, let's go to the next. Yes. Okay, so it was not a unanimous decision. It was a 5-4 decision. And the minority actually included somebody called Chief Justice Warren. Does anybody remember the Warren era, right? So this was at the early part of the Warren era. He hadn't really gotten his whole court moving yet. And so he was still in the minority. But Justice Black, in his dissenting opinion, said that what he thought about this whole thing. This decision indicates the extent to which people are willing to go these days to overlook violations of the Constitution perpetrated against anyone who has ever even innocently belonged to the Communist Party. Now, I just want you to sit with that a minute and think about what we're hearing about today. Talk about the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? There's othering of someone based on a system belief. There's deportation involved. There's a Supreme Court that is looking for any rational reason to underpin a decision that actually takes benefits away from a person that paid into a system that promised it was going to pay him back. And now here we are with this law made by the Supreme Court back in the 1960s, that is not a vested right that you possess.
You get picked up by the microphone.
Yes.
We need the microphone.
Is there any other reason besides having been a member of the Communist Party that they can deny you your Social Security benefits here?
I can say the question back.
Yeah.
I
have to talk to that.
She asked, is there any other way that they can deny your Social Security to you other than just having been a member of the Communist Party? There are a number of different things. I can't go through all of them, but the big thing for this was, it was during part of the McCarthy era, and there was the big scare, right, about Communist Party membership, and it was viewed as being a threat to the United States security. And so they amended the Social Security Act for this specific reason, and it was because he was deported. It was the deportation plus that reason for the deportation that he got denied his benefits. And it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Because if you're not going to pay him, because it doesn't make sense to pay people that are outside the country, then why are you paying other people that are still getting their Social Security while they're outside the country? I will simply say to you that lots of times, cases don't make a whole lot of sense. This is something we struggle with as lawyers every day. There isn't always consistency in the reasoning. And so really, I think Justice Black got it right. What this decision was really about was communism and communist association, and not that much about the benefit system. But I'll also say, if you think about the way that Social Security works, it actually does make sense, just for a different reason than the court said. When Social Security started, people started paying it immediately. And elderly people started to draw down benefits immediately, even though they hadn't paid in, right? Because we had to start doing something, because we had elderly people that were starving in the streets. It's a pay-as-you-go system. Okay? It's a pay-as-you-go system. Today's dollars go right back out into the community in your Social Security payments all the time. It's this constant turning over of money. And that's why when people talk about phasing out Social Security, that's not going to work, because people continue to pay into it today to fund what we're paying today. And I don't think you're going to get young workers to agree that they have to pay into a system today when they know they're not getting diddly squat when they hit retirement age. So this is a concern.
What if the president decides to deport people because they're Democrats?
I'm probably going to be on the first plane. He said, what if the president decides to deport people because they're Democrats? I personally am a Democrat. The ACLU is not a political organization. We are in a time of very unsettled law. I'm going way off script. I hope that's okay. We are seeing our government institutions behave in ways that they have not behaved before. And it feels like sort of a dislocation of all of the things that you remember from school. Congress is tax and spend. The executive goes and declares war and kind of administers things. And the judiciary says what the law is. And that's the way we all grew up. That's how we all understood government should be. The people that are in charge right now have a different view of what the executive branch should be behaving like. They think that traditionally, the president has not been exercising as much authority as it should have. They also think that Congress, in some places, has given over too much power to the executive branch by saying things like, and in this point, sometimes I agree with them, look, if you think there's an emergency, for example, at the southern border, and you think we're being invaded, you can do anything you want to do to make that stop. And they didn't put any safety rails around that decision making. So as long as the president says, I think it's an invasion, now he says that's good enough under the statute, and I can stop this by increasing border patrols, by doing huge deportations, by setting up strips of land that are now federally occupied and used as detention camps and all of this. So we are living in a very unsettled time with each of the branches of government trying to they're like three sumo wrestlers in a ring right now, trying to figure out where's my territory and how do I keep you out of mine and how do I keep you at bay? And then, of course, we've got the dynamic of the Republican Congress being very much in lockstep, whether you think that they are doing it out of fear or because they agree with the president at every turn, whatever it is, they're voting for his programs, they're not holding him in check, and that is why we're in the position that we're in right now, with everything feeling like it's really moving around and feeling very, very unstable. It's an unstable environment. Now, things are gonna shake out. I hope they shake out the way that I would prefer, but right now we just have to kind of live through it and lift our voices up, and I'm gonna talk about how you can do that in effective ways. But let's get back for a couple of minutes to Medicare and Social Security. All right, so the other piece that we have to worry about, it's not just the Supreme Court saying it's not your vested right. The statute, the Social Security Act says right in it, the right to alter, amend, or repeal any provision of this law rests with Congress. Now that's where it should rest, they're the lawmakers. But repeal is a scary word. They can undo the whole program. We do not have a guarantee to these programs. So let's go to the next slide. I'm having a wellness check. How are people doing?
Good.
You guys are okay? Don't get despondent. Don't get despondent. Okay, let's go on. All right. So could Social Security and Medicare be cut the way that Medicaid was? Yes and no. There are possibilities. They could make changes like tightening up eligibility rules, like maybe you wouldn't be able to draw down your Social Security benefits as early as you used to be able to. Or maybe they'll heighten your co-pays for your Medicare for a bunch of stuff. Maybe they'll stop covering eye doctors and hearing aids and things like that under your Medicare, and you'll have to do more out of pocket. Those are the kind of places that they've been talking about, kind of getting at those programs and reducing benefits and things like that. But it's a little harder to do. Yes?
If they do that, it has to be done through Congress.
Congress would have to change the law for most of the changes, but administrative ones we've already felt, and I'm gonna talk about that. So the way that Medicaid is structured, as I said before, is different than Social Security and Medicare. And there's two big differences. One is the way that it's funded. Medicaid is a program that uses state dollars plus federal dollars. And what you just saw happen was that the feds said, I'm not paying in as much for my share of Medicaid. And while I'm at it, I'm gonna put restrictions on how much you, the states, can raise, because we don't think this program should be so big. And I'm gonna double penalize you if you're giving certain kinds of medical care that the federal government currently does not approve of, like transgender care for children, like reproductive health care for women, primarily abortion care. And so they're trying to make it much harder for states to raise their share of the Medicaid money, and the feds don't have to pay if the states can't pay. The way it works is first the states spend it, and then the federal government matches it, right? And if my spending goes down, the federal match goes down. So there's a lot of different ways that they've found to kind of get at the amount of money that can be fed into the Medicaid programs. And because of that, we're seeing this very, very concerning restriction in who can get care, how much care is going to be available, the requirements that they put in place for the work requirements for people that are between the ages of 19 and 65. That's another place where, come on, you can come up, where they can actually impose restrictions on what they will pay for. So we've got a question.
Yeah, Illinois is a donor state.
Yes.
Which means we pay more taxes than what we take back
Yes.
in grants.
Yes.
How does that affect Social Security and Medicare, Medicaid, if we're putting in more and we're not taking as much, what rights do we have to say, hey, wait a second, we're not going to give you as much, we're not going to pay for Alabama, Mississippi, etc. And so what rights do we have?
Okay, so, oh, I wish I'd taken notes. That was an excellent question. Okay, we are a donor state for purposes of Medicaid. So what we pay in and the amount that we get back in match, we only get like a 50-50 match with the federal government. Some of the other states get a higher percentage match because of the poverty level in the state. Unfortunately, we don't have a right to say, I'm not going to give as much because of the way that the statute is written and the way the funding is done. What's interesting about Medicaid, though, is we don't have to participate at all. Medicaid is a voluntary program. The state of Illinois could back out of it. Now, nobody wants that, right? Because it's better to get 50% of the dollars from the feds than none of the dollars from the feds, and we need to have that support. But every single state has the opportunity to walk away from the program. And that gives the feds a little bit more leeway when they're messing around with all of this stuff, because they can say, look, you don't have to play at this party. If you don't like the rules we're setting, you can just stop having Medicaid altogether in your state. So right now it would take a change in law for us to be able to throw our weight around in terms of how much we're actually contributing through our taxation and the way that we contribute to the program.
I have heard that Illinois is pursuing a state Medicaid option. If we actually go through with that, can we pull out of the federal Medicaid system?
Yes, we could. We won't. Because again, we're talking billions of dollars of federal money that come into the state for the federal share of Medicaid spending. There already is a state Medicaid program, and what that has traditionally been used for has been to give Medicaid to people that have immigration status that the feds forbid us from getting a match for. What we did is we set up our own state Medicaid program to provide for abortion care within the borders of Illinois, because we can't get a federal match for that, to ensure that transgender children get gender supporting care in the state of Illinois. If they're on Medicaid, the feds won't pay for that, but we can with our own state dollars. And again, there's a large category of people with immigration status, not undocumented, mind you, not undocumented. They're here legally, but there's very, very few people who are allowed to draw down on Medicaid, or were allowed to draw down on Medicaid. I think some asylees were able to do it. So it was a very, very tiny group of people, and we expanded that. We gave coverage to more people. You've also probably heard about the expansion population. The expansion population is something that they started under Obamacare. The federal government at that point really wanted to encourage people to get onto Medicaid, because it's not good for anybody if people don't have health insurance. There's no preventive care, you overuse emergency rooms, I'm speaking to the choir here. And so, there was a lot of incentive to make sure that we got people on the rolls, and it covered people who didn't have kids at home and who were from the ages of 19 to 65, so working people. And one side of the government thinks that working people should work, and they kind of ignore that a lot of these folks were working, but they had really bad wages and they couldn't afford to buy health insurance. So the thing that the current administration hates so much about the expansion population is the way that they lured states into doing this is they said, we're not going to do our usual state match of 50-50, you pay 50, I 50. We'll do 90% as the feds. The feds paid for 90% of that care. And the idea was that was how you were going to get states that traditionally wouldn't have bought into this to come along and do it. Well, now nobody wants the expansion population anymore. And it's the most lucrative place for the feds to save money because they were paying 90% of the care. So if they make it harder for people to be in the expansion population and keep their Medicaid, they will have to pay less and they will save money. That's the idea. That's the reason behind the work requirements. The work requirements that they're imposing have been tried in several states. They do not result in higher employment among people that are on Medicaid. What they do result in is people that lose their Medicaid because they can't do their paperwork. And keep in mind how many people have been fired, right? How many people have been fired out of the federal government that would have been there to help you figure out how to fill out your application, to look at your application after you sent it in, to help you fix the errors, and then to get you processed and approved. And now what they're asking the expansion population to do is work requirements and re-verify every single 6 months, not once a year. So it's a lot of administrative burden that's being layered on top of people's heads. So I'm gonna go back to the good news. Social Security and Medicare are federal dollars only. Just federal money. It's not a matching program. Second, it traditionally, well, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. They can change how they are gonna pay. They can change some of the things about what they're gonna pay. They can fiddle around the edges, but to actually pass legislation to change these two programs is gonna feel a lot different than going after the poor. That's just the political reality of it. So the difference in the funding matters a lot.
The question is that
Sit down
if
so we don't see your
Medicare,
stomach. We see your face.
if Medicare is state,
Medicare is all fed,
it's all fed.
all fed.
Okay, so they have control.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's Medicare, wait, which is?
Medicaid is 50-50,
Right,
the one for the poor people. Medicare is all federal government, just like Social Security payments are all federal government.
okay. So hypothetically, and not saying it's wrong, but if Illinois is a donor state and we are pro Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, some social issues, Kentucky turns around, or Alabama or Mississippi or whatever it might be, and says, we're cutting it out. Does that mean everybody from those states, if they came to Illinois, that we would accommodate them?
If anybody is living in Illinois, they are eligible for Medicaid within the state of Illinois.
But they have to be living here, okay?
The second piece that makes it a little bit easier and a little safer for Social Security and for Medicare is the way that changes can be made to the program. You know, you start off with a very general statutory creation of the benefit, and it's pretty bare bones. It's got sort of the fundamentals in it. And then all of the details get filled in by this great big regulatory structure. And the regulatory structure is what RFK Jr. is sitting on top of right now, managing all of our regulations and the way that these programs work. Unfortunately for Medicaid, Medicaid is not protected by a statutory piece of language that does apply to Social Security and Medicare. And that provision says you have to follow the Administrative Procedures Act if you're going to change regulations. And you're thinking, blah, 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 it's a lot of words. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the rules of the road, okay? It used to be, until back in 1971, somebody woke up and realized, oh my gosh, do you realize that RFK Jr.'s predecessor could change the regulations for Medicaid without doing any public notice in advance, without telling people what he was going to do in advance, without asking for any public comment, without having to answer any public comment, and he could just put them right in place if he wanted to. That's terrible. We got to do something about this. Back in 1971, they're having this conversation. And RFK Jr.'s predecessor said, I do not want to be bound by a statutory restriction. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you know what? I know I don't really have to do this under the Administrative Procedures Act because of the way the Medicaid statute's structured, but I'm going to because I'm a good guy. I'm going to promise, I'm going to issue a waiver of my freedom to make unilateral changes to the regulations for Medicaid. And you can trust me to be a good guy. And we did trust him. We trusted him from 1971 all the way up until this spring. And this spring, RFK Jr. took a signal from the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court has been telling us over and over and over again for the last 4 years, you can't give away your power if it's granted to you in a statute. RFK Jr., if you have the power to unilaterally change this stuff, you can't give that away. That's your power to exercise. No waivers allowed here. That's inappropriate. So RFK Jr. says, I have to do my duty. I have to do my duty. I have to do things the right way. I have to change things if I think they're wrong, or if I don't think that they're consistent with the president's policies. So that's what he's done. He did away with the waiver, and now here we sit, and Medicaid regulations can be changed without public comment, but not Social Security and not Medicare. So for those changes, there is this very long, elaborate, cumbersome process that can take 2 years, depending on how contentious the changes are that are proposed, where first they have to publish everything. And it has to stay up for a period of, I don't know how many days. And all the public people can give their comments about why they think something is good, bad, or indifferent. And scientists come in, and economists come in, and not-for-profits like me come in and say, don't do this or do this. And then they have to answer all of that stuff. So the more noise that gets made, the more work they have to do to justify their changes. And then when they do make a change, if somebody challenges it in court, they have to be able to show that they had a good reason, a decent reason for doing what they did. And it can't just be because Trump is president now. That's not how it works. You don't just get to do it just because of a change in administration. Now, it's not a very high bar. Remember that whole thing about we don't have to pay people if they are overseas now?
Just speak a little louder.
Yes. So it's not a very difficult test to reach, but it's still a test, and it can, again, tangle things up in lawsuits, and it delays things. And then hopefully, as time progresses, people think better about, are you really going to do it this way? Do you have to shave some of the sharp edges off of what you're doing? Can we carve this back a little bit so it's not quite so painful for people? And so you hope then that the social pressure, the political pressure comes to bear, and if changes are made, they're not quite as serious or significant as they otherwise would have been. So it's an important protection.
I have a question regarding some behavior that's gone on with Trump. And it frightens me when you say that there are certain levels that have to be achieved. There's certain procedures that have to be done.
Yes.
However, in other laws, like immigration laws and like that, he has submitted emergency requests for the Supreme Court to realize, and they've said on many occasions that it does have to go through the courts, but you can do it for now. Would that apply to any of the Social Security statutes or any of the Medicare statutes?
Yes, and even worse.
I'm sorry I asked that question.
It's important. It's important for people to understand how this stuff can happen, right? That's why I'm here. There are exceptions even to the Administrative Procedures Act. If somebody thinks there's an emergency, right? If there's an emergency of some sort, and it sounds like, oh my gosh, what could they have been thinking that they built emergency into this statute? When everybody's playing by the rules, you have a real emergency, you need to have the flexibility to be able to react, right? I mean, if we were bombed tomorrow, everybody would want the president to be able to do things to defend the country using emergency powers. But we haven't been bombed. And the problem that we're having now is that emergencies are being declared when we don't really have an emergency. Invasions are being declared when we don't really have an invasion. And we don't have a court that is willing to say to, we don't have lower courts or upper courts, that are willing to say, you get to look at more than whether or not President Trump said it was an emergency. You have to look at what's happening in the world. In no other context can you walk in as a litigant and say, well, you know what, I said it was an emergency and therefore it was okay, I did this. There are very strange judicial doctrines being developed right now, and this is one of our problems. But it's also a problem of Congress's, and it can be fixed if we vote for people that want to do the fixing. And you need to know to ask for this stuff, or they're not going to think of it and do it, right? So what you need from Congress is fix the act that says that if there is an invasion, you get to do X, Y, Z. By adding, and by invasion we mean people with guns from another country crossing our borders with the intent to occupy our territory, right? We all thought we knew that's what invasion meant. But he's like, you know, there's lots of meanings to invasion. Remember President Clinton? It depends on what is means. Yeah, well, this is what we get, right? When we start playing with words this way. And we need to have him fix the law that talks about the alien invasion, that is, or with tariffs, the economic emergency, even though we've had trade imbalances for decades, now all of a sudden it's emergency. If we fixed that law, if it wasn't such a broad grant of authority to the executive branch to do whatever he pleased, we wouldn't be in this pickle, hopefully. That's as long as everybody still follows the courts, and we're kind of hanging on to watch and see whether or not they will follow the courts. Okay, so I'm going to make it even worse.
Oh, I'm not going to leave them.
Okay, so does everybody remember that all of a sudden we all heard no more paper checks for Social Security, right? No more paper checks. Everybody's got to go in, you got to verify who you are, you got to set all this stuff up. That was not done because of a change to the Social Security Act or the Social Security regulations. That happened because President Trump issued an executive order to the Treasury Department. It was part of DOGE, and it was all about it is wasteful spending to use paper checks. It causes processing fees. We have to buy the checks. Somebody's got to clear the checks. We're sending stuff through the mail. We should be doing everything by electronic transfer. Now, I will tell you, I think that those are all very sensible, economically and fiscally responsible changes. It's the way that it was done that was so harmful. There was this sort of assumption on the administration's part that everybody is totally cool with electronic banking. I'm not. It scares the bejesus out of me. And that everybody has access to computers, and everybody has reliable online connections, and oddly enough, it's the rural communities that were going to be the hardest hit because they were closing all of these Social Security Administration offices around the country. So, you have to watch for trouble from every angle, okay? You've just got to make sure that you're kind of staying abreast of what the Trump administration is doing. And so, let's go to the next slide. How do we do that? So, has anybody in this room, have you heard of Project 2025? Show of hands. Okay. Has anybody read it? Okay. So you can Google it, and the document comes up, and it's super long, and I would tell you that if you just read the introduction, you'll get a flavor. And it's worthwhile to do, because I will tell you, it was in fact a roadmap. It is telling us all of the things that are on the agenda for the current administration. And the way that you know that is the guy who wrote it is in the Trump administration in a very high-level agency position, right? So he's running the show, and he's not a guy that you see on the news. He's no dummy. He's not Stephen Miller, right? He's staying in the background, and he's trying to make sure that he's got all those agency heads. You do this, you do this, you do this, and it's his plan. So it's worth it to just call that up and read through it. It's not that long, and like I said, you don't have to read the whole rest of it. It kind of repeats itself a lot. Another thing that you can do is check the website every once in a while, the White House website, to see what executive orders the president has been issuing. They're short. They're frightening, but they're short. And you will see, it's the warning flag, it's the red flag going up in the air. This is coming, and it takes a little while for it to kind of make it out of the administration in terms of action. But you can see where things are headed. And then you can hopefully be better prepared to take action when they start to actually do something, right? I mean, I will tell you, just a week ago, he came out with a new executive order about homelessness. And this new executive order about homelessness talks about, I want for homeless people to not be out on the street anymore. I want them to be civilly committed or arrested. I want to define people that need to be civilly committed as people who can't take care of themselves, whatever that means, right? According to whose standard? Used to, the standard was if you're a danger to yourself or if you're a danger to others, if you're acting violently, if you are self-harming, then you are subject to civil commitment because we preserve life in this country, right? But if you're not doing anybody else any harm, they're supposed to leave you alone. It's your constitutional right, your own personal autonomy to be left alone and not institutionalized against your will. Once you get institutionalized, he'd like to medicate you against your will, whether you like it or not. We're going to get you taken care of, and then they're going to spit you back out of the institution without housing, without a job, with no support, no Medicaid, right? And what do you think is going to happen? They're not going to be able to get their prescriptions, even if they wanted to take them. And we're going to have this cycle of people going through this circle of hellish situations. So it's not a very well thought out executive order. Now the temptation is, he's not going to do that. Okay? Right, just erase that from your vocabulary, right? Yes, he will. He will. And the other thing that he wants to do is he wants to make sure that he can prioritize sending federal support money to communities that follow this rubric. So if you are a local municipality that has passed one of those grants pass ordinances that says no public sleeping on the streets, in the parks, or anything else, you get money. If you don't have an ordinance like that, no money for you. So he's playing again with federal support dollars to try to advance federal priorities as he sees them. So we can look at Project 2025 to get a sense of where things are probably headed. We can look at the website for the White House itself. They're very proud of their executive orders. They go up like this. They're always available. And you can read all of them if you'd like. And then also read or watch your own trusted media. If you're doing that, you're going to be hearing about things that kind of burble up. And you're going to know when it's something that matters to you, pro or con, and you're going to have an opportunity to go out and make some noise.
On these executive orders on this platform, do they have his signature on them?
Oh yeah, they do. But remember, they're not. Come on up.
I mean, I just the way he signed.
Oh
it,
yes, with a
it's
Sharpie.
just- yeah.
It's with a Sharpie. And remember, they're not law. Okay, they're instructions. They're instructions to his agencies about what he is directing them to do. It's like a management memo. But unfortunately, people get so worked up about them, they start to obey them before they even have to. And so, if you agree with it, that's terrific. If you don't agree with it, make some noise. Yes?
I don't know who oversees the cost of living increases for Social Security,
Yes, I know.
but will that take an act of Congress to get those to a reasonable level? Because when the cost of living is 9% and we get a 3% increase, it's really hard to keep up with inflation. I don't know who the overarching person that decides that, but does it take an act of Congress to change that to reflect what's currently going on in the economy?
My recommendation would be yes. What you need is a statutory amendment because it's a lot harder to change a statute than it is to change a reg. You've got to call it for a vote. It's got to make through 2 houses of Congress and get signed by the president. And the only way you can ever get to a place where you can keep those numbers moving with the economy is to have a law that says they have to move with the economy. We had the same problem in the state of Illinois with foster parent reimbursement rates. They were stuck so low, and when we went through the budget crisis, right, under Governor Rauner, nothing went up. And so families were still being paid with 5 years ago money instead of the kind of money that it costs today to take care of kids in their care. That's been fixed, but what they do every time is just exactly what you're talking about. They'll bump up a little bit, and then they think, well, we're not going to touch this again for 4 years. Well, that doesn't help. So this is the place where you need to know, who do you go to? You go to your federal representative. You go to your federal senator to talk about those changes, because that's part of the Social Security Act and the Medicare Act, and those are federal laws. Your state representative can't do diddly about it. Not his fight, right? So you want to go to your federal representative and your federal senator, and you say to them, I would really like to have you champion legislation to make this fix. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So now we're going to talk about activism. I just want to get a little sense of the room. So can I have a show of hands? Who has ever been to a protest? All right. Who writes letters to the editor? No more? Who writes to your congresspeople? All right, so I'm going to hope that I'm not telling you all sorts of stuff you already know. I hope that these pointers help a little bit. Maybe it'll just be a little bit of a refresher about how to do those things effectively, and especially in today's environment, okay? So, First Amendment, what does it protect? Next slide. You can express your point of view, you can speak your own truth, you can criticize the government, you can speak anonymously, you don't have to give your name. Next slide. What you cannot do is you can't threaten people with harm. You cannot incite people to violence. Throw that rock through that window. No. We don't say that. You can't defame people. You can't accuse a person of being a pedophile, for example, unless it's proven in court. You say alleged. You hear that a lot on some channels, right? And you can't be obscene. Now you're probably thinking, I just went to a recent protest and I saw some signs that were, I don't know, maybe a little bit close to obscene. Maybe they were. Try to keep it, still having speech value to it. We remember the one Supreme Court justice who's famously said, I know obscenity when I see it. We kind of have a good idea. So stay away from that. Next slide. Okay, so if you're going to do a letter to the editor, here are some tips to make sure that you actually have a chance of getting it published. You've got to do it the exact same day as whatever it is that you're reacting to. It might be you're reacting to an article. It could be that you're reacting to something that happened out in the public, but you've got to be out there immediately. You do not mail letters to the editor. You've got to do it electronically. Sometimes the forum that you're sending your thing to has an online form that you can access, and you fill it out and you send your thing in. Or you can send it in by email. Either thing will usually work, okay? What you want to do when you send it in is you got to keep it short. You've got to identify yourself because they might want to contact you before they publish it. So you've got to give your name for that particular kind of speech to the newspaper that you're talking about. But you can ask to have your name withheld when it's published, okay? You want to make sure that you state right up front, I'm here because I'm concerned about X. My view is blah, 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 blah. I want X person to do X, all right? So you've got to have a thing you're worried about. You tell something personal about yourself, not that kind of personal, but personal about why it means something to you. And then ask for a specific thing, call to action. The people in this community should rise up as one and X, whatever it's going to be. That's how you make sure that you've got it tight, your content is really narrow, and you're not taking up a lot of space because they don't want to do long letters. They like short, punchy letters. right? Do not engage in personal attacks. Don't call a legislator a bad name. You know, I mean, you're just not going to get published. It's not fruitful. And it's not very nice either. So we want to make sure that you're being as effective as you can. And keep in mind, this is not a dissertation, right? This is a letter to the editor. Just state your proposition, and you don't have to have all sorts of stuff underneath it. You get to just speak. Next slide. All right, contacting your local officials. It can be your local council. It can be your library board because you're worried about censorship in the library. Any one of the kinds of governmental actors that you would want to interact with. It's the same basic thing. You need to give your name, make it clear that you're a constituent so they care about you, right? Tell them what your issue is, ask them what you want to support or oppose or introduce as a change in the law because you see a problem. Make sure that you've given your contact information because again, their staff might call you and want to talk to you about what it is that you're seeing and why you feel the way that you feel. And again, I want to emphasize, no matter what your personal views are, if you care about something, you need to tell your legislator. They need to know what everybody in their district thinks. They need to have an understanding about why some people might not agree with what the majority seems to think is the most important, so that they can figure out, how do I communicate why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I think it's the right thing. And if you think back to your junior high days and the theory of representative government, right? There's one group of representatives that think it's their job to reflect the opinions of their constituents. They listen to the people, they act accordingly. There's a different kind of legislator though, and they're the ones that they think they know best what is good for their district. When you are trying to figure out who to vote for, you might want to ask that representative or that candidate, what's your theory of representative government? Do you think it's your job to do what I think is right, or do you think it's your job to do what you think is good for me? It's a choice. It's a choice, right? So do contact your legislator. And I will also say, it's not up on the slide, sometimes you'll get something in your inbox from some of the organizations that you belong to, and they'll say, oh my God, we do it all the time, sorry. There's a huge piece of legislation, act now, act now. When you're trying to send something that says, support this bill, that's a good thing to do. When it's something like, make sure that you're speaking out about issue X, but it's not on an actual vote day, it is a lot more effective for you to write your own email. Don't cut that thing that they give you and dump it into your thing and send that. It's not your words. And you want to know what? They know it. They can tell immediately if what you've done is you cut and pasted something out. And it counts, but not the same way. When you are a unique voice, you are paid more attention to, you are more likely to be called by the staff person in your legislator's office and be able to tell them more about why you care about a particular issue. Next slide. Public meetings. Does anybody go to public meetings? Okay. Public meetings are tough. You're very brave. Keep being brave. The first thing you want to do is look at the website of whatever it is that you're going to go and speak at. And again, I think the easiest one right now is to think about your library and whether or not you're seeing someone that's trying to put together a list of banned books or restrict people's access to certain kinds of content. There will be a posting that will tell you that if you want to speak, you have to sign up in advance, and here's what you have to do. You got to follow those rules. If you don't follow the rules, you won't get a chance to talk. Arrive early. Make sure that you did everything, and if you have to clean anything up on your registration, you do that. If you're going with a group, sometimes it's nice for everybody to wear t-shirts together to kind of show there's some solidarity behind your message. When it's your turn to talk, you stand up, you say your name, you say your thing, 2 to 3 minutes max. That's all you get. You want to be effective. Plan for it. Don't give a whole lot of, I'm sorry about blah, 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 introductory crap, right? Get up there, say your issue. I'm really concerned about X. I think that this is a violation of rights. I think that this is good for the community. Whatever it is that you want to say, and then sit down. The people you're talking to, it's not the audience. The audience doesn't matter. The only people that matter are the people that are on that board, on that council, in that body. They're the ones that have the power to do something by voting. And if it's like me talking to a judge. You need to convince them that public opinion is behind you, that you are reflective of your community, that you have talked to your neighbors and you know that you are not alone in holding this view. That's how you get an authoritative and effective presentation at one of those meetings. Now afterwards, if people clap, it's really cool, but it doesn't always happen, right? Sometimes people jeer, sometimes people are really negative. Part of the problem with free speech is everybody gets to talk. Protesters, counter-protesters. Everybody gets to share their views. So you've got to be prepared that you might hear some nasty comments back. Just don't react. Just ignore it, right? Walk right past it, go sit down. You did your job as a citizen trying to stand up for your beliefs. Next one. Right to protest, right? Next slide. I am going to hope that the people in this room are here to protest and not to engage in civil disobedience, okay? Civil disobedience is totally different than protesting. Rosa Parks on the bus, that's civil disobedience. She saw what she believed was an unjust law. She broke the law. She broke it on purpose. She was fully prepared to go to jail, and she did. That is different than protest. I am here to talk about protest. We do not encourage or engage in, at the ACLU, civil disobedience. We are lawyers. We uphold the law, right? We try to change the law when we think it's bad, but we do not disobey it, we hope. So, if what you want... Yeah, you got it.
I'm trying.
Oh. Okay, so we don't do civil disobedience, we do protest. So let's go to the next slide. So, where can I protest? Where can I be? You can be on a public place. You see it at Daly Plaza, you see it at the Federal Plaza, you see it at parks, public parks. You should not be blocking sidewalks unless it's a permitted event, right? If you're gonna organize one of these things, get advice about whether you need a permit. You shouldn't block the street. None of that blocking the Kennedy Expressway, none of that blocking Lakeshore Drive stuff. That's not lawful behavior, right? So you can be in a public place. You don't always need a permit. If it's gonna be a very big event, usually yes, but there are times when something happens and it just causes this sort of uprising of people that come out to the streets to want to talk. And those are okay. You don't have to have a permit for that, right? But you want to make sure that if you're participating in an event, that you're not interfering with people's ability to get by, cars' ability to get down the street, and that sort of thing. When you saw that protest, if you saw it, for No King's Day, they blocked the streets off for that parade. They knew exactly where they were going to direct the traffic and the people, right? So everybody stayed safe. It's not a free-for-all. When you're at a permitted event, you need to be prepared that the police can tell you there are some things that you can't bring along with you, right? Anything that is a weapon or could be used as a weapon. We don't want people knocking each other over the heads with flagpoles and stuff like that, right? That's dangerous. The most important thing, though, really for one of these protests is if you hear the police department give a dispersal order, they will say, you will be able to recognize it instantaneously. They will say, we are ordering people to disperse. You must disperse now. They are required to give you a path for you to be able to leave. Obey that order. The minute that that happens, you do not belong there anymore. It becomes dangerous. It can become violent. You will become subject to arrest. They are allowed to decide when the crowd is starting to get out of control. So I really strongly urge everyone, obey those lawful orders from the police. Sometimes they're hard to hear, but you know, if you start to see a lot of people moving, it's probably best to go. Next slide. If the police do come up to you while you're at a protest and start to give you a hard time, stay calm. You can answer questions. You are not required to surrender your phone and have them look through it. You are allowed to ask them, am I under arrest? And if they say no, you walk calmly away, right? Never touch a policeman. Never push a policeman, right? You don't have to consent to being searched. There are some circumstances where you can be patted down, but there again is the time when you say, am I under arrest? And if they say no, you walk. The reason that they would be patting you down should be because they're afraid you have a weapon. There can be pretextual situations where these things occur, but you don't want to engage in any sort of contretemps with the police, all right? And you don't want to ever resist, you know, or interfere. I think there's something in here about you are allowed to film. You are allowed to film with your camera. That is lawful in the state of Illinois. What you can't do is get in between an officer and the people he's trying to control or she is trying to control and start to interfere with police activity. It may very well be illegal police activity. Film it, don't interfere. Don't interfere, because you will find yourself arrested and your charges will stick because you interfered with a police officer, whether acting lawfully or unlawfully. It is not a smart tactic, okay? So I have overstayed my welcome, I'm afraid.
No.
I am done. Any further questions that anybody want to ask? Anybody wants to ask, please feel free. Yes.
Come up.
So first, if I may make a comment, this has been an extraordinarily helpful
Oh,
presentation, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we're all very worried about surveillance. And so I think we're pretty safe here talking to our Democratic representatives. But I have been hesitant to call the White House or any department within the White House or administration because they'll have my phone number then. Is that correct? That they can get that access and then find me?
Yes, and I will tell you, there's no point, right? There's no point in calling people in the administration. The people that you need to speak to are your elected representatives. They're the ones that have the potential for being able to do something about what the executive branch is doing. The executive branch itself, sadly, is not really interested in a diversity of opinion.
I was waiting for more information on Medicare. I've been paying for Medicare probably for 15 years and just always had to pay my monthly fee, no problem. I had a knee replacement about 4.5 years ago. I went at Midwest Orthopedic at Brush. And no problem, I never pay anything but monthly fees. The doctor I have at Brush, Midwest Orthopedic, he's dropping Medicare, and he said that 3 of the other doctors at Midwest Orthopedic at Rush are dropping Medicare, and the others are on the way. So I think Medicare is a problem too.
I would agree with you. It's a very scary proposition, and there is no requirement that physicians participate. That's up to them. They can choose.
He said Medicare is not paying the doctors enough money. That's his problem.
And I think that he's correct. I think the rate structure is really inadequate.
And they don't talk about Medicare on TV. They're just talking about Medicaid. I think it's all in trouble, man.
You're right. And they do tend to follow the shiny object, and it is the thing that is the most front of mind right now because there has been that drastic cut. But I would agree with you that the rates are a real problem, and it's just like the woman who brought up the fact that the cost of living doesn't keep going up. We don't have a statutory mechanism to make sure that we are close enough, even if they're lower bottom market rates, because if you don't have adequate payments, You don't have doctors participate, and it's even worse because it is really a very big administrative burden on the doctor's office to deal with all of the paperwork that has to be
Right.
done for all of the claiming.
So if I want another operation, I have to pay him $9,000, and if I want a shot, I have to pay him $250. So it's all my regular fee.
And again, I can't give you any personal advice about your personal situation, but I think that,
But they're all going back.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I just wanted to mention it because I'm going back to it, you know?
yes, no, it's a very real problem.
I don't need to look over there. Whatever happened to the fact that anything to do with senior Social Security and Medicare were the third rail of politics? What has changed, and what else can we do to make sure that we're not on the wrong end of the beat?
The question was, whatever happened to the reality that used to be, it always held true, that Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid were the third rail of politics. It's going back to that unsettled atmosphere that I was talking about before. My personal view is that with the gerrymandered districting that we have in so many states, we have a body of legislative representatives that are no longer responsive to their district. Because they have safe seats, they don't have to listen to you anymore. And if they don't have to listen to you anymore and they're confident of being reelected, they can do whatever they want, and there is no such thing anymore as a third rail, right? That is the problem. Our Congress is not responsive to the people because the way that the districting is working, they have safe red seats, safe blue seats. I mean, let's be real. It's not just one side doing it. And that is a damaging dynamic for our democracy. Some of the states are trying to experiment with new approaches to districting. Some of them are appointing citizen commissions to draw the district lines. And, you know, it's a great solution if everybody does it. It's not a great solution if only one side does it and not the other, because then you don't have symmetrical warfare. You have asymmetrical warfare. And it feels like that is what we're in the middle of right now. But that's what happened.
Asymmetric is what we're in the middle of.
Yes.
Do we have any more questions for our speaker?
Go ahead, Dr. Bill.
Is there a place where we can hide?
No hiding, all right? No hiding. It's really important. I mean, it's you guys, by just being here, are identifying yourselves as active community participants. It is now more important than ever that you speak to people, that you talk to people, that you share your viewpoint, that you get out there and you express yourselves. It is not a lost cause, right? I mean, I firmly believe in our Constitution. I love our Constitution. I think our form of government is a beautiful, beautiful thing when it's done in good faith. And we have to get back to a place where, yes, we're going to have disagreements about policy, but we no longer have disagreements about who is an American and who isn't. That's really what we're after. And so, yes.
And may I please add, the divide and conquer is the tactic. So
Yes.
we have to care about all of us, because if they just get you to focus in on, well, it's only going to affect me and mine, then they're winning.
Well, and I want you to think about voting differently maybe than you have in the past. You know, for a very long period of time, a lot of us had the luxury of being single issue voters, right? If you cared about women's reproductive health, you knew exactly who to vote for. If you cared about the guns, you knew exactly who to vote for, and that's the only thing you cared about. And that's because we still had a social contract with one another at that point. There was still, as I said, good faith in each branch, good faith from federal to state and back again, right? And that is breaking down. And because of that, it is really important to know the full range of things that your elected representatives will vote for, what they will oppose. And for you to be able to help them to do that in a responsive way, you need to tell them what you care about. And if you demonstrate to a particular congressperson's office that you are a person that is more than a single issue voter, they will engage with you. They want to know. And the way that they can find out the easiest is when you volunteer your information to them. Don't wait for happenstance for somebody to maybe call you. Don't wait for the happenstance that maybe your name will be drawn when they do the phone town hall. You get out there and you affirmatively state what it is that you care about. And that's how you can make a difference. And it's through free speech that our Constitution does still protect, right? Okay, I now